Velkommen til Beiners Hotspot. En af konservatismens store tænkere, Roger Scruton, er i København for at besøge tænketanken CEPOS og Trykkefrihedsselskabet. Og Roger Scruton har blandt andet udgivet How to be a Conservative, en af hans nye bøger om konservatismens væsen i forhold til andre ismer, andre ideologier, og The Soul of the World, som handler om i virkeligheden, at der er mere i verden end ren biologi. Vi er også følende, artistiske, kulturelle væsener. And Mr. Scruton, a very warm welcome to you.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
When we discuss contemporary conservatism, there are all sorts of conservatism. We see Donald Trump in the US with the populist version. We see the Tea Party with anti-tax and anti-immigration. We see also UKIP in the United Kingdom. They are talking about beer, anti-immigration and cigarettes. And the Tory Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, said in 2012 that choose greed. Greed is good. So where does that leave contemporary conservatism?
Well, of course, we're talking always, you're talking about politicians who are trying to attract attention to themselves, and for old-fashioned intellectual conservatives like me, it's not about drawing attention to yourself. On the contrary, it's about the maintenance of order in yourself, in private life, in social life, and in the state. And maintenance of order is an extremely complex thing, because after all, civilization, which is the kind of order that we all respect and desire, is not easily created, but it's very easily destroyed. And a conservative is someone who sees this, who sees it, recognizes how precarious everything is, and works to find the things that he must hold on to in order that our inheritance of freedom and law should survive.
One of the things that you have pointed in your works is that contemporary conservatism lacks thoughtfulness, lacks philosophy. Is that a criticism of the conservative politicians or the conservative movement?
Well, some conservative politicians will say, thank heavens that we don't think, because thinking always gets people into trouble. Thinking is the real cause of socialism, of mass movements, totalitarian forms of government and so on. They all originate in some kind of philosophical system, but we don't have a philosophical system. We are simply responding to the events of the moment and doing what we can to manage them. And that's a sensible attitude in a way, but of course it is also a philosophy if you look deeper. And my work, I'm not a practicing politician, but my work has been an attempt to discover the deeper principles that motivate that sort of politics. Why we should not have these great schemes, these great ideals, these great goals towards which we're working. Why we should, on the contrary, be attempting to discover what is precious in our inheritance and how we should hold on to it.
Yeah, you say in order to conserve what is important, we need to reform and adapt.
Yes.
And that means that conservatism is a very dull philosophy in many ways, but it's also a very practical philosophy.
Yes, I make this point in my book, How to be a Conservative, that conservatism is boring but true. The alternative is exciting but false. And that's the problem that we have. Conservatives have a great public relations problem. They are, in my view at least, trying to appeal to what is permanent in human nature and what is permanent in ordinary people, therefore. But it's hard to make it exciting for the intellectuals.
But you also say that we shouldn't cry about the past. We shouldn't think too hard about what we have lost. We should more think about what we have now and what we want to preserve. That could be the principle of rule of law, property rights, obedience to the laws, social cohesion and things like that.
Of course, a mere nostalgia for the past doesn't help anyone.
But normally that's what is connected to conservatism.
Conservatives are always accused of this, but the people who accuse them usually don't have any knowledge of the past anyway. And I take very seriously Edmund Burke's view that a society is not a contract among the living, but a relation between the living, the unborn and the dead.
And what implication does that have?
It means that you have to look in a much longer term than just who is living now and the resources available now. You know, if you think of the environmental movement, which is so important in both of our countries, they're worried about the future of mankind. But why are they worried? They're worried because we have resources and achievements that we want to pass on to those who are coming after us. But we can only respect those resources if we remember that we too have inherited them from people who've made sacrifices in order to create them. So unless we have some sense of having come from a past, we won't have any clear sense of where we're going in the future.
And you lack that very much in contemporary politicians?
Well, of course, the politicians, partly because of the media, partly because of episodes like this, you know, everything is concentrated on the present moment. And to make that moment into a symbol of the long term is something which is too difficult for a politician. That's why we need artists and writers as well.
And in The Soul of the World, you also point to the fact that we are not only biological machines where our DNA has been mapped and our destiny has been mapped out. We also have art and culture and books and religion in all sorts to remind us that we are something more, that we are interconnected with the past and also has a legacy to give onto the future.
Yes. We human beings are animals, of course, but we are also something else. We are self-conscious. We relate to each other as self-conscious beings. I address you as you, not as it, as this thing, this animal before me. I'm listening to your words, giving you arguments, expecting you to make decisions. This whole way of relating, which distinguishes us from the rest of the world, is at the foundation of political life as well.
And one of the things I found very enlightening in The Soul of the World was that you have a chapter, and it starts really very philosophical, since you are a philosopher, and it talks about the first person plural. And to the Danish audience, I would say it's about the we, that there is a we are a part of something deeper, with other peoples and with institutions and the legacy. What do you mean by that?
Well, the first person plural is a general term that I use to comprehend all the aspects of social and political life, including the law, and in the end, our way of identifying what we belong to. You know, all human beings are born into a home. It may not be a very good home at first, but you know, that's something that they need, that security where they're among those whom they know and love. And through all our life, however strange that life may be, there's this longing to return to that home and to make it our own. And we know, we have a sense of where it is, what will go on there, which we inherit through our family and our nation and the customs that surround us. And it's the preservation of that first person plural which makes political life possible.
And so it's more important that locally originated problems are solved locally instead of devising big political schemes where you try to micromanage people.
Well, that's one consequence of looking at things in this way, yes. I mean, obviously in great emergencies you need someone to step in and take control. That's why we have armies, you know, in which order is imposed from above and doesn't grow from below. But in a real civil society, and this is very much in the spirit of not only of England but of Scandinavia generally, in a real civil society, order grows from below through the interaction of people, the sense of what is theirs and what is not theirs, and where we are and where we are not. You know, and those are simple emotions, but they're very powerful.
And when I read in How to Be a Conservative, I thought very much about also another contemporary conservative writer, Francis Fukuyama, who has written very much about political order and political decay, where he says that if you make a comparison between countries and also in a historical context, you need rule of law, you need accountability in the political system, and you need a state that really delivers to its people, not producing corruption, but producing real results. Yes. Those are three of the basic components, and I find them as well in your work, but there are more to it than this.
Yes, because those are the those are the great benefits of the legal order, but we still have to recognize that there's a question: what makes legal order possible? You know, in whole areas of the world, it either does not exist or it's in a state of collapse. And one thing that makes it possible is this first-person plural that we were just talking about.
The we.
Yes.
Is that the European Union you're thinking about?
No, obviously not, because that is a top-down imposed. It's not even a plural. It's an institution in Brussels, essentially, the European Commission. No, I'm thinking much more of inheritance from the Reformation and the Peace of Westphalia and so on, of the national idea.
The modern nation state,
yes,
in other words.
Yeah.
So you are very much in favor of keeping the nation state. But isn't that what we're seeing right now in Europe, that the nation states are getting stronger, so to speak? They take back some of the power from Brussels?
It could be that they're wanting to do so, but it's very hard to do so because, after all, they are hampered by this mound of legislation, 180,000 pages. Nobody knows what it says anymore, but that takes precedence over all national legislation. So it's very hard for a nation state actually to make decisions on behalf of its people anymore.
So you recommend a Brexit?
Well, what I would love to see is Brexit followed by the exit of the other nations that think as we do, like the Scandinavian and maybe one or two more, and starting a new union.
A free market area?
Well, something, you know, the treaty, the European treaty, the Treaty of Rome, was signed over 60 years ago by people who are dead in a situation that has vanished. It isn't the kind of thing that is needed now. The situation has so much changed in Europe with mass migration and everything else that we really need to start again. And this is what, of course, Brussels is preventing. After all, there's a whole society, 300,000 of people who are dependent on Brussels for their income, and it's a very substantial income you get if you're part of that machine, and they're going to try and stop this. But the ordinary people of Europe, if it was explained to them, you know, that treaty has done its job, it's finished. Let's start a new one that is adapted to our circumstances and respects the sovereignty of the nation states, and it will be much more easy for you, the people, to accept it. You know, I'd like to see that happen.